That cheap piece of metal means absolutely nothing, Chloe. You spent 4 years playing dress up in the dirt while I actually built a real life. My sister Vanessa's voice echoed across the crowded, high-end restaurant. She slammed her hand on the white tablecloth, rattling the champagne flutes. 50 pairs of eyes instantly turned toward our table. My mother chuckled softly, sipping her wine, while my father deliberately looked away, completely indifferent. I sat there in my pristine Marine Corps dress blues. I had just returned from a grueling 14-month deployment. I was a captain, a logistics and intelligence officer, and pinned to my chest was a bronze star. I earned it saving lives under mortar fire. But to my family, I was just the permanent disappointment. Vanessa, please, it's my welcome home dinner, I said, keeping my voice level, though my chest burned with agonizing pain. Welcome home dinner? This dinner is to celebrate my engagement to Brad, Vanessa sneered, gesturing to her fiancé, an arrogant corporate lawyer who was smirking at me. You just showed up in that ridiculous masculine uniform to steal my spotlight. You've always been jealous of me, Chloe. You're pathetic. She's right, Chloe, my mother chimed in, her voice dripping with venom. You look absurd. Change out of that outfit or leave. You're embarrassing us in front of Brad's parents. The humiliation was a physical weight. The surrounding tables whispered, judging me. My own family was treating me like absolute trash on the night I returned from a war zone. Unable to breathe, I stood up, threw down my napkin, and walked out into the cold rain. I sat in my rental car, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. My hands were shaking. I wasn't shaking from fear. I was shaking from a lifetime of stored-up grief and cold, bubbling fury. Buzz. My phone lit up in the cup holder. It was a text from my father. Father, since you decided to throw a tantrum and ruin your sister's night, your mother and I are revoking your access to the guest house. We've already changed the gate codes. Don't bother coming by to get your old childhood boxes. We threw them in the trash. Before I could even process the cruelty, another notification popped up. A banking alert. My mother had just attempted to wire out $25,000 out of our joint family trust account, an account intended solely for my grandmother's medical care, which I managed. They weren't just cutting me out, they were actively robbing me and destroying my past while I was still bleeding from their words. They thought they were the royalty of this town. They thought Vanessa's lavish lifestyle, my father's prestigious real estate firm, and my mother's high society reputation were products of their own genius. They had no idea. 3 years ago, my father's firm was facing a massive federal audit due to his gross negligence and borderline fraudulent accounting. He was going to prison. I was a first lieutenant back then. I utilized my military legal connections, spent nights reviewing his books, and quietly used $150,000 of my own deployment savings and combat pay to cover his deficits and clear his name. More than that, the very house they lived in, the massive estate Vanessa bragged about, was legally in my name. I had bought it through a military housing program to secure a lower interest rate for them when they went bankrupt, trusting them to pay the mortgage. They thought they owned it. They thought I was just their charity case daughter who couldn't afford a real civilian life. They had completely forgotten whose blood and sweat funded their luxury. I drove to a local motel, my mind racing. I opened my phone to check the time, but instead, my screen exploded with notifications. Vanessa had already gone to war online. She had posted a photo from the restaurant on Facebook and Instagram. It was a picture of me walking away, my back turned. Tonight should have been the happiest night of my life, but my sister, Chloe, who can't handle anyone else succeeding, showed up uninvited in her Marine Corps uniform to demand attention. When we gently asked her to respect my engagement, she threw a violent tantrum, insulted my fiancé's family, and stormed out. It breaks my heart how the military changes people. She has become unstable, aggressive, and greedy. Please pray for her. The comments were already pouring in, from local relatives, neighbors, and high school acquaintances. "So disrespectful," one wrote. "She always was the black sheep," another commented. "Using the uniform for clout is disgusting. Shame on her." My heart shattered. They were completely destroying my reputation in the community I loved, turning everyone against me before I even had the chance to unpack my bags. That was the exact moment the grief died. The agonizing pain vanished, replaced by a cold, calculated military focus. I was a Marine Corps officer. I planned logistics for entire battalions. I tracked enemies across continents, and I had just realized that the greatest enemies I faced were sharing my last name. I wiped a single tear from my cheek. "No more," I whispered to the empty motel room. "You want an unstable sister? I'll show you what a calculated combat veteran looks like." I opened my laptop. First, I locked the joint family trust account, freezing every single dollar. My mother's $25,000 transfer flashed declined. Next, I pulled up the deed to the estate. I contacted my real estate attorney and initiated an immediate, expedited eviction notice for the occupants of the property. Finally, I downloaded every piece of financial evidence showing that my father's company was alive solely because of my stolen funds. I wasn't going to hide anymore. I was going to dismantle their illusion piece by piece. The next morning, I went to a local coffee shop to finalize the legal paperwork. As I walked out into the parking lot, a sharp instinct pricked the back of my neck. In my line of work, you learn to notice when you're being watched. A sleek black SUV with heavily tinted windows and government plates was parked at the edge of the lot. The engine was idling. Through the windshield, I could barely make out the silhouette of a man in a crisp military uniform. He wasn't moving. He was just observing me. When I unlocked my car, the SUV slowly pulled out, circling the lot once before disappearing down the main street. My brow furrowed. Who was that? Was it internal affairs? Did my family file a false police report against me? A cold knot formed in my stomach, but I couldn't let distraction ruin my timeline. The main event was tonight. Tonight was the grand engagement gala. Vanessa and my parents had rented out the most exclusive country club in the county. Hundreds of wealthy locals, business owners, and Brad's elite family members were in attendance. I pulled up to the valet. I wasn't wearing my blue dress this time. I wore a sharp, tailored black suit. I walked past the security guards, who knew my face, and let me right through the grand double doors. The ballroom was magnificent. Violins played softly. Right in the center of the room stood Vanessa, wearing a white diamond dress, holding a glass of champagne, surrounded by a crowd of adoring friends. The moment she spotted me, her face contorted into a mask of pure, ugly arrogance. She intentionally tapped her glass with a spoon, silencing the entire room. "Everyone, look who decided to show up," Vanessa announced loudly, her voice dripping with mockery. "The unstable soldier is back. Did you come here to beg for forgiveness, Chloe, or are you going to throw another violent tantrum because nobody is paying attention to your little medals?" The crowd chuckled dismissively. My mother walked up beside her, crossing her arms. "Get out of here, Chloe. You are ruining your sister's life. We don't want your charity, and we don't want your broken mental state around our guests." Brad stepped forward, puffing out his chest. "Leave, Chloe, before I have the country club security forcefully throw you into the street." The audience's judgment was suffocating. They looked at me like I was a piece of garbage. My family thought they had won. They thought they had pushed me to the absolute edge. Suddenly, the heavy oak doors of the ballroom swung open with a loud thud. The room went dead silent. Walking into the ballroom was a tall, imposing figure. He wore a pristine Marine Corps uniform, his chest completely covered in rows of colorful combat ribbons and medals. On his shoulders gleamed the silver stars of a Major General. It was Major General Thomas Vance, a legendary commander and a man who answered directly to the Pentagon. Behind him walked two stone-faced military police officers. The entire crowd gasped. My father's jaw dropped. A major general entering a local civilian country club was unheard of. General Vance didn't look at the crowd. He didn't look at my parents. He marched directly across the polished floor, straight towards our table. As he approached, he stopped exactly 2 feet in front of me. He snapped his shoes together, stood at flawless attention, and delivered a crisp, powerful salute directly to me. "Captain," General Vance said, his booming voice echoing in the silent hall, "it is an absolute honor to finally meet you in person." I immediately snapped to attention and returned the salute. "The honor is mine, General." Vanessa's face went completely pale. She stumbled backwards slightly. "General? I think there's a mistake," she stammered, trying to flash a manipulative smile. "My sister is just a low-level logistician. She's unstable. She's been harassing us." General Vance turned his head slowly, his eyes cutting through Vanessa like ice. The sheer authority radiating from him made her instantly freeze. "Shut your mouth," the general said, calmly, but with a terrifying weight. "You are speaking about a national hero. Captain Chloe Vance, no relation to me, but a sister in arms, saved an entire platoon of my men in the Helmand province. She is receiving the Silver Star next week at the Pentagon, and I came here personally to escort her." The crowd erupted into shocked whispers. Vanessa looked like she had just swallowed broken glass. "But that's not all I'm here for," General Vance continued, turning to his military police officer who handed him a thick manila folder. The general dropped it heavily onto the table right in front of my father. "Mr. Davis," General Vance said to my father, "your daughter, Chloe, has spent years protecting you. She hid your financial fraud, she paid your debts, she even bought the house you sleep in. But since you decided to defame a United States Marine, the Military Legal Division has conducted a thorough review." I stepped forward, looking my mother and sister dead in the eyes. The cold fury in my soul was entirely under control. "Mother," I said clearly so the entire room could hear, "the $25,000 you tried to steal from grandmother's medical fund last night, it's frozen. In fact, I've removed you entirely from the trust. You don't have access to a single penny." My mother choked, grabbing her chest. You can't do that." "I already did," I replied calmly. I turned to my father, whose face was completely drained of color. "Father, the eviction notice for the estate was served to your office an hour ago. You, Mother, and Vanessa have exactly 48 hours to pack your bags and vacate my property. If you aren't out, the sheriff will remove you." "Chloe, please!" Vanessa shrieked, her voice cracking as she realized her entire high society illusion was shattering in front of her future in-laws. "Brad's parents are watching. You're ruining my wedding. You're ruining my life." Brad's father, a highly respected corporate executive, stepped forward, looking disgusted, not at me, but at Vanessa. "Brad, this is the family you're marrying into? Liars, thieves, and fraudsters who abuse a war hero?" "Dad, I didn't know," Brad stammered, backing away from Vanessa as if she were radioactive. I looked at my sister, who was trembling, tears ruining her expensive makeup. I leaned in close, ensuring every single person in that silent ballroom heard my final words to her. "You said my medal means nothing, Vanessa," I said, my voice dripping with icy authority. "But it means I know how to survive a war. You, on the other hand, won't even survive the civilian consequences of your own greed. Enjoy the street." The breakdown was immediate. Vanessa dropped to her knees on the ballroom floor, sobbing hysterically, clutching at Brad's tuxedo pants. Brad brutally pushed her hand away, turning his back on Vanessa. His parents walked out of the ballroom without saying a word, effectively canceling the engagement right then and there. My mother began screaming at my father, blaming him for the financial ruin, while my father stared blankly at the legal documents, realizing his business, his home, and his reputation were entirely destroyed. The guests, the same people who had laughed at me minutes prior, began turning away in disgust, whispering about the sheer toxicity of the Davis family. Several people stepped up to me, apologizing profusely and trying to shake my hand, but I ignored them. They didn't matter. General Vance looked at me and offered a small, proud smile. "Your ride is waiting outside, Captain. Let's get you ready for the Pentagon." "Right behind you, sir," I said. I turned my back on my weeping family, walking out of the country club with my head held high, leaving them to drown in the absolute chaos of their own making. You cannot cure a toxic family with sacrifice. For years, I thought if I worked harder, if I protected them, if I funded their lives and stayed quiet about their abuse, they would eventually love me. I thought my sacrifice would buy their respect. But toxic, envious people don't appreciate sacrifice. They view it as weakness. They will happily bleed you dry while mocking the scars they gave you. True honor isn't about enduring abuse from people just because they share your DNA. True honor is knowing your own worth, drawing a line in the sand, and letting karma handle the rest.